Welcome to the Governor's STEM Council STEM Best webinar series. I am Tanya Hunt. I am the project coordinator here at the Governor's STEM Council, and I welcome you and thank you for joining us and viewing our Grant Writing 101. We have created this webinar series with the intention to inform you of what STEM Best is. It's one of our programs that is offered through the Governor's STEM Council. BEST stands for Businesses Engaging Students and Teachers. And right now we have our application window open, and it is open until May 15th. And in an effort to support those communities and individuals that want to bring this opportunity where business and education intersect to create authentic work-based learning experiences for their students in their community, we're offering these resources to you, those interested parties. And so today, I have with us our in-house expert, Carrie Rankin, our Associate Director, to share with you some of her insights to the STEM Best application and tips and tricks. So with that, Carrie, I'll let you take it over and start your slideshow for you as well.
Thank you, Tanya. As Tanya mentioned, my name is Carrie Rankin. I'm Associate Director with the Governor's STEM Advisory Council. Just a little bit of history about me. For the last almost 22 years, actually, I have been working in the world of fundraising, grant writing, and fund development. From very complex grants and proposals at a federal level to not so complex proposals at a state or local, sometimes even corporate level, putting proposals together. But what I want to do today is talk in a general sense about things that have worked for me in grant writing over the course of the last 20 years, and then get into the application and go through each section of that and give you some what I would consider, or as Tanya alluded to, tips and tricks as it relates to each one of those sections. So without further ado, I'm going to start in a general sense mentioning how do I write a grant or a proposal or respond to a request. And so the first bit of advice that I can give to you is to go into the information that's being given you, print it out, read through it, mark it up, write notes on it, get your team together, ask them to do the same thing, and then bring them back together. And your team's going to be defined different ways. I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the application and the rubric as it relates to what we're asking you to respond to. But be sure and read the information first. I always do that. It seems simple, it seems common, but it is such an important step in terms of deciding what it is that you need to present in the form of your information and what you don't need to present. So read through the application first. The next thing I would do is take a look at your rubric. Do the same thing, to read through that, mark it up, write questions on there. The rubric is the piece of information that the reviewers are going to look at and use as they score your applications, and it's determined who gets awarded and who doesn't. While you're doing that, so on this slide, you see the web address on that space on our website is the PDF form of both the application and the rubric. Again, I can't stress enough, print it off, share it with your team, mark it up, bring your team back together and ask questions about it. Moving forward, I would say answer your application questions by speaking to the rubric, because as I mentioned, that's what your reviewers will use to evaluate your application. And make sure that if nothing else gets written in your response, that you are answering the question that we're asking you as it relates to how the reviewers are going to score it. So what I'm going to do next, again, that all seems like common sense, but I feel like it's so important to tell you that I've had the greatest success in terms of making sure that I read through the pieces of the application and the rubric first and determining what I'm going to write based on what it is that it's going to be scored with. So we're going to move forward and looking at each one of the sections of the application and the rubric. And what I'm going to do is try to give you some best tips as I see them in regards to helping you write your application. So the first part has to do, or the first section has to do with student impact. In each one of these, I'll read some of the questions. Some of these I might not read all of the question, but then what I'm going to do is talk about tips that I would recommend. So even before the student impact section, we asked you to compose an executive summary, which is 500 words or less. There is a limit to what you can say on that. I would recommend and say to remember that we'd like you to focus on information or demographics of students and your teachers who will be participating in your STEM-Best model, not just general demographics about your entire school, unless of course your model or your program encompasses all grade levels and all classes. But I guess what I'm saying on this is be a little more concise and specific as to what your plan is and what your program is going to look like, because that's your our little window into your world of what your program is going to be, or sometimes I refer to it as your elevator pitch. 500 words is a big elevator pitch, but it gives us a general enough sense, but concise enough sense at the same time of what it is that you're going to do so that we understand what your program is about. So leading into the first section, section 1 is about student impact, and 1.1, worth 5 points, the application question, asked you to give us student impact data. I'm not going to go through each one of these questions, but you can read them. But this is a section that is quantitative, meaning we're going to ask you for numbers. You aren't going to need to provide narrative on this. You'll talk about some of this as we go through the other sections, curriculum, professional development, things like that. My tip to you would be try and estimate as closely as you can the percentage of students you'll have in your strands or your model according to the demographic being asked to report on, meaning free and reduced, female, non-white, other things. We are asking this information to learn if there are opportunities to reach underrepresented and diverse populations and to help you think about how your model can represent and include these populations. Moving forward, there is a 1.2, it's kind of a section 2 or section 1.2 to student impact information. And this is actually more of the narrative part. So the question is, describe strategies for inclusion of underrepresented groups in STEM. Ethnic, racial minorities, students with disabilities, students of poverty, so on and so forth. I won't read each one of those. There is a link to educateiowa.gov and WIOA barriers to employment and definitions. I would recommend looking at that information and seeing how it represents and relates to this question. My tip on this particular section is to identify an underrepresented group within your community that can participate in your STEM-Best model. This might be different than what is traditionally underrepresented or thought of as underrepresented, meaning it could be first-generation students to go on to post-secondary education, students with disabilities, some of the ones we mentioned here, women in STEM, men in health, so on and so forth. But think outside the box on this one and think about unique strategies to include and engage these populations in your school, your district, in your program. State your case as to why this is a targeted group of need for your district and community and how you're going to approach that. Section 2 has to do with your STEM curriculum, and 2.1 question is describe your goals to create and implement an employment-driven STEM curriculum that is multidisciplinary, aligned to state standards, and focused on personalized learning to prepare students for future work-based learning experiences, including college and career programs. And there is also, as you will note in that question, a link to the Iowa Work-Based Learning Guide. Again, download that, read through that, share that with your team, have them read through that, come back together and then come to a consensus and say, what is it that we're going to focus on as it relates to the goals that are outlined in that learning guide and what you want to do with your program and your goals in your school. My tip in this particular section as it relates to the rubric is the success factors of the STEM Best program and models really truly are partnerships and work-based learning experiences. There are other things that are involved, but these are the two key things that make these programs tick and run so well and become successful. So think of your curriculum development in that manner. Be sure and preview, as I mentioned, the Iowa Work-Based Learning Guide to familiarize yourself with these priorities and think of how your model can be developed or formed, responding and how these priorities relate to your district, your STEM Best model, and your partnerships that you're wanting to form or wanting to implement or starting to form. Next section is has to do with STEM curriculum. And the question on this is providing evidence of alignment of planned curriculum and activities to your district's goals and improvement plans. What I would highly suggest, in the past, we have seen everything, I'll say, from soup to nuts, if I'm being honest, in regards to responses in this question. You'll see in the application question, well, it's pretty open. My tip is be concise. Be concise about the alignment of your STEM Best model or your program to what your district goals are going to be. Now, keep in mind that these proposals can be planning grants or planning proposals, so you might not have all that figured out, but you should know and should relate to what your goals are and be able to at least express the idea of how you're going to align and move forward with the plans to put your model or your program in place based on what those goals are. If you don't have all of this figured out, that's okay, but again, address how your team is aware of and incorporating and matching these goals and what you will do to better align these goals as you move forward in your program. If you're already down the pathway in that's great. Then talk about how you have aligned it, how you're moving forward in these goals, how you've moved from point A to point B. You can be a little more specific and tell more information that way if you're at that state. But again, conciseness is important. I would highly recommend that in this section. Section 3 talks about community partnerships, and this particular question you're going to be asked to start out with some basic demographic information. The question asks you actually to name a community or organization partner, and you can have more than one, or you can have one. It doesn't matter to us as long as you have at least a partner. You'll have the opportunity to tell us the community partner name by their organization or company name, then give us a contact person within that organization and an email. And in the next slide, I'll talk about why that email is important. My advice as it relates to the rubric and the evaluation scoring on this is that partnerships and a variety of partnerships is good, if not great. I will say that business and industry most strongly aligns to great work-based learning experiences, and we have seen that the more successful STEM Best models do tend to align to business partnerships, but that's not an absolute necessity. other partners can serve that purpose also, including nonprofit organizations. Don't forget about the Iowa Work-Based Learning Clearinghouse for projects too. So many times we have been asked the question, or as I go out and talk to businesses and educational organizations in rural Iowa, they say, well, we just don't have a business in our community. Well, the clearinghouse, which is at clearinghouse.futurereadyiowa.gov, helps you with that solution now. You can engage, you can find partners, you can find projects even that you can have your students start on, and they can be anywhere in the state of Iowa and get you moving down this road. I will also mention one thing that I've thought about personally, you know, when people are saying, but I just don't know where to start. I don't know what my needs in my community are. And in the last 6 years that I've done the work that I do, traveling around the state of Iowa, visiting with businesses, and really just looking at communities, 3 key things I keep in mind are every community needs a source of energy, meaning power. So if you have an energy company, you could work with them. Every community has to have some form of healthcare, or a region has to have some form of healthcare. So there's another almost instant built-in partner. And technology. How many companies use technology, whether it's a true technology company, or it could be a retail company like Hy-Vee or Casey's. They all use technology and data to plan for and form successful ideas and strategies on how to better engage people in their community with their business. So if you start nowhere else, I might even suggest looking at those 3 opportunities in your community. Reach out to those business partners and say, can we work with you on this project? I will also mention that if you are struggling to find a partner, we have 6 regional managers. Hopefully you know who yours are. I think Tanya is going to talk about who they are at the end of their presentation here, but contact them. Contact me, call us, write us info@iowastem.gov and say, hey, I need some help getting in touch with a business partner. We can help you do that. And if we can't, we can find somebody that can. So don't let that be a barrier. My last bit of advice on this particular slide is involve these partners early on in your conversation, and often. I can't say that enough. Early and often, develop your plan. Develop an opportunity where you have what I say are the right people on the bus in the right seats helping you form your plan. The next section has to do again with community partnerships, and it specifically aligns to that last detail on the last slide where it talks about the partner email. And the reason that we ask for that as it relates to the question is 1 sentence. We'll be asking you for a 1-sentence description of their involvement. In fact, the identified partner will receive an automatic request for more detailed information from our application system. My tip to you is, particularly with this section, it's funny, but it's not. Please be sure to visit with your partners from the start and throughout the entire writing and development process of your application. In fact, they may be able to help you write your application. And wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? So you don't have to do it all yourself. This step and the partner email that they're going to receive as part of this application process should not come as a surprise to them or you. I hesitate to even mention this, but I do need to tell you that in past application rounds, we've had a partner denied submission of a letter of their involvement because they were not aware of the partnership that was being described and that they were being asked to do. So in order to help you effectively write a high quality application, we just ask you to pay attention to that, include them early and often, bring them to the table in the course of conversation. These partnerships don't have to be 100% formalized at the time that you're writing your application. but share with us how your conversations are transpiring in regards to what your partners, who they will be, and how they will be involved with your model. I want to make sure that I also touch on, I meant to say this before, but in the process of writing grants, I know that many of you may or probably are educators and you're not grant writers. You haven't had 20 years of experience like I have. I had to learn it somewhere too, because I was not officially trained in that. That was not my formal education. But there are people in your communities that can help you with that too. So don't hesitate to reach out to them. I know that many communities, many school districts have their own educational foundations, and those people are trained grant writers. Many communities have a community foundation, or your counties or your region have community foundations. So don't hesitate to call them and say, hey, I have this great opportunity to write a proposal to receive $25,000 to get this wonderful work-based learning experience for my students. Can you help me write this application? Who knows, they might be a partner with you. So reach out to those folks. Don't be afraid to engage them in that conversation also, and they can help you. You have to submit the grant yourself through your school district, or it is a district, I believe, but make sure that you find people. And again, if you don't know who those are, send us an email. We can put you in touch with those folks too. So moving forward, section 4 has to do with professional development, and this question is, professional development, or PD, must include both business partner support and working with youth, as well as educator support in linking industry needs to educational content. To enhance PD, interdisciplinary teams, including business and education professionals, are encouraged. So describe how your program will meet these professional development expectations. The best advice that I can give to you in this particular question is to look at the rubric and the 3 points bulleted in that and respond specifically to what's being asked in that. I'm not going to read them verbatim, but document your training plan. How are you going to engage educators and community partners? How are you going to engage support organizations, non-educational community program partners? And what is their role going to be in the essence of setting up and determining what your professional development is going to look like? What will your proposed PD model look like with your partners? Basically is what we're asking you to respond on this. So be as thorough and concise again as possible, but talk about what that partnership is going to look like in developing PD. Next section has to do with the financial part, which the others are pretty heavy on the narrative side of things. I would mention, in a general sense, narrative doesn't always mean that you have to use every character or space that you're allowed either. I have written many grants where I might have 1,000 words and I only use 400 of them, because I have determined that the more concise I can be and to the point to answer the question that they're asking me, the better. I always try to put myself in the mindset of, if I'm reading these, am I going to understand with more or less information? And I tend to err on the side of less, unless I need all that space to tell my story. But think of it this way: you're making that pitch, and you want to keep the attention of your audience that's reading and reviewing those. So make sure that you speak in layman's terms and in a way that they're going to be able to easily read your response and understand that. So moving on to this next section, describe below how your project will expend the STEMBEST grant and meet the one-to-one cost share requirement during the award period of July through June. What you see on the screen is actually a picture of what the template, the budget template or the format looks like for both what you're requesting from the grant award and what you're going to propose as cost share. The grant request basically means that's what you want us to provide to you in the form of the resources up to $25,000. And the cost share is the part that, just as it says, cost share, how are you going to bring resources, whether it be monetary or in kind, to the table to support your program. There's going to be a whole webinar series next week about cost share, so I won't get into the detail of that. I will just say that you can ask for up to $25,000, and your cost share can exceed that, but it cannot be the other way around. And you've got two pieces of information to fill out on this. You're going to have a qualitative number that you're going to put in those columns where it talks about the grant and the cost share. And then you're going to have a narrative, what we call budget narrative in the grant world, where it says grant funds to be used for and cost share funds to be used for. That's where you tell us as specifically as you can how you're going to use those dollars. I would personally say that conciseness and specificity in the narrative is much better than laying it out there as, well, we are thinking maybe we would use this space, or we might need technology. Okay, great. How much technology? What's that space going to look like? What's it going to be used for? Things like that, you know, and it's got to relate to the categories that are listed there, the curriculum development, site visits, convenings, needs assessment, those kind of things, but be as concise as possible as you can with that. All right, let's move to section 6, the sustainability plan. And in this one, we ask you to detail the continuation of the program beyond the grant period, including leadership personnel, financial considerations, and the space to operate. It does specifically break down in the rubric how many points you will get for each one of those 3 categories. So pay attention to that and speak to how many points you're getting. If I'm giving good advice, I would say more about leadership and personnel and financial than I would the space, because I'm getting less points for that answer as space. I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest on that, that's how I would respond to that question. So my tip, in your narrative for this question, be sure to speak to your plan for longevity of your model and your program. The STEM-Best model and programs are not intended to be one and done requests. We really, really hope that that is not what you're thinking of when you're putting together your plans and you're determining how you want to make this request. When developing your plan with partners and aligning to your district goals, remember to keep in mind how your plan can make a change in the culture of STEM, work-based learning, real-world experiences for students, and authentic experiences, and how that looks in your school and your district and your community. Section 7, modeling and dissemination of information. The question is, list possible strategies for promoting the model to other partners in Iowa. Detail how you'll advocate for the program and strategies you'll use to disseminate the information. My tip on this in terms of responding to this question is develop strategies to do this as you are building and working through your program. Keeping in mind this question along with the other ones, again, you don't have to have everything detailed out. Part of the great opportunity with these STEM-Best Awards is they can be planning grants or they can be implementation grants. So keep that in mind. We are not expecting you to be able to hit the ground on July 1st running. Your first year can be a planning grant. So keep that in mind, but develop these strategies as you are building and working through what that looks like. Don't wait until you're ready to roll out or implement your program to start thinking about this information. Think of it as building a how-to manual for your program, or what I refer to in business as standard operating procedures, or SOP folders, so that anyone at any one time could come in and look at it and run with it. The second part of model and dissemination is list possible strategies for promoting the model within your community, detail how you'll advocate for the program and strategies, and how you'll use that to disseminate the information. And my tip on this particular part is from the start, become part of the network and family of STEMbest. And I know Tanya's gonna want to talk about this after I get done. To promote STEMbest universally beyond the time and the life of the grant, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at the partners on our website, which is iowastem.gov/STEMbest. Call, email, text them, and ask them questions. There are 63 awards that have been given to 58 models. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Tanya? They've been through this all. So let them help you. Don't reinvent the wheel. Ask them questions. Ask them to share ideas on strategies. Google their Facebook pages, their Twitter pages, their social media pages, because so many of these models have such great information that you can beg, borrow, or steal. They won't care. That's why they put it out there. Use it. The last thing I will say in regards to this is we had a great webinar yesterday with 2 of our existing partners that talked about some of the challenges and opportunities that they face moving along. If you want that link, contact Tanya and she can send it to you and you can go through that. I mean, I was sucked into the webinar the entire hour it was on. They could have talked for another hour about things that have happened to their models, in their models, as they've worked through setting things up, as they continue to face opportunities and challenges, but use them as a resource. I believe the last part that I'm going to talk about is evaluation. So we're asking in this section to describe how the program will collect observational and qualitative data and quantitative data, examples of which are listed there. Please note that the STEMbest awardees will be required to provide 2 years of follow-up reporting to the Governor's STEM Advisory Council. So don't let that be a surprise to you as you get into this. My tip on this is the more detail on how you'll collect the data and what you'll collect, the better. Tell us about the methods you'll use to collect this data and how you'll report it. How will you be doing this as you move through the development and implementation of your program? And think about that from the start versus, okay, I'm already a half a year into this, or I'm writing this as if I'm a half a year into this, and how do I collect this now? Don't make this question be an afterthought because it's the last question on the application template. Be prepared to discuss how you'll be tracking, for instance, graduation data or data sets that are important to you. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tanya. Hopefully that has given you some tips and tricks specific to the application questions. If you have any questions at all about grant writing in general or resources to use, obviously we can't write your grants for you, and we don't honestly want to put ourselves in a position where there's any question as to something like that potentially occurring. But we want to help you write quality, high quality applications. So utilize us as a resource, utilize me as a resource. If you're at a stumbling block at any point, let Tanya know, let me know. Go to Tanya first because she's great at organizing and disseminating this information, but no, I'm kidding. You can come to either one of us. We're here to help you. That's why we're here. We're a resource, not only a financial resource, but we have knowledge from the past applications. We have knowledge from the network that the STEM Council has built. So use us, please. Tanya, back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carrie. That was great, great advice. Yes, I appreciate it, and all of Iowa should appreciate it. And much of what Carrie was referring to, this is a map of the current models, the STEM Best models we have throughout the state of Iowa. And really, they are a resource. And just as Carrie mentioned yesterday, we are a resource to them. STEM Best is a program, and as Carrie said, it's not a one and done thing. Once you're STEM Best, you're in the family. And so we provide a continual support network. We have quarterly convenings where we had 2 of these models talk to us last night to share their obstacles of what they have encountered in developing their programs. And to be clear, our models come from everywhere, all sorts of communities throughout Iowa. And one of our highlights are, I'm calling out Shelly Miller from CAM, has been providing just successful opportunities and engaging her rural community there in Southwest Iowa, and have really bought into what they are building upon and growing by doubling the amount of students that are interested in this part, in their STEM Best program there. So it's something that can be done anywhere, and I really encourage you to connect with these individuals. And they are gracious people. They want to share, they want to learn. They are educators who are passionate, and I think that's something that all educators share, just the love of learning and creating these great opportunities for the students of Iowa. So please feel free to connect with them. This information is also on our website. Each program has a contact person with their email that is on our website. An additional resource, as Carrie had mentioned, in our lovely state, we have 6 STEM regions, and my superheroes within each region are our STEM regional managers. We have wonderful partnerships with some of our higher ed institutions, and you will find that each region has a STEM manager, and you should use them as a resource. They are your local, regional go-to knowledge. I support the STEM Best effort statewide, but these are the people that should know who to connect you with within your region if you're struggling to find what a business partner might be for you in your area. So please feel free to reach out to them, as well as Carrie and myself. And I don't mind being your point of contact. Carrie's a busy lady. I'm grateful for her time that she has spent with us today. So
I'm happy to help.
She's always happy to help. So that's why she's graciously provided her email if you have any questions to follow up with the information she's presented today. Or if you would like to connect with us, receive the recording from our convening last night to hear from some of our STEM Best partners, feel free to drop me an email at hunt@iowastem.gov or give me a phone call. I'd love to chat about what STEM Best is. I have a lot to say about it. I think it's a great opportunity and would love for every student in Iowa to have this opportunity. And check out the rest of our webinar series. We are covering cost share on March 10th, and then how to navigate our online database so you can submit that application that we are talking about. So with that, we will conclude our webinar, and I just thank you all for viewing. And
one just thing, can I interject one last thing?
Absolutely.
For all of you viewing and listening out there, in the grant world, in the fundraising world, I've learned that you don't get what you don't ask for. And so I would highly encourage you, even if you are thinking about an application, if you have the capability to form your teams, your partnerships, and can write your application and turn it in. Obviously, we want to help you. Again, I can't stress enough to make it as high quality as possible, but you do not get what you don't ask for. So share your idea with us. You might not think it's good. We might think it's the best thing we've ever seen, and our reviewers. So we won't know that though unless you tell us that.
No, that's Great advice. No, I love it. That's perfect. And I like to tell people that this is kind of like seed money. This is the seed where you're planting your idea. You don't know everything from the start or how everything's going to grow or turn out. And this is just the opportunity for you to plant that seed and grow throughout the process. So be brave and try. There is, like Carrie said, that you'll never know until you try. So please reach out to us if you need further support or questions, and thank you for viewing.